from the members of the panel and ask them to say who they are and their part in the team. So Jill.
My name is Jill Myers and I play Joan in the show.
My name is Heather Saunders and I play Nancy in the show.
I'm Richard Atkinson and I am the musical director and play the vicar in the show.
I'm Bill Miller.
And Bill Miller, yeah.
I'm Fiona Evans and I am a writer, playwright.
And I have to, some apologies from Chris Monks, who's directed Geordie Sinatra, but unfortunately he's indisposed and cannot be with us this afternoon. And he sends his apologies. Before we start, I suppose, just when we do events like this, I always like to know, is there anybody who hasn't actually seen the show? They're coming tonight rather than this afternoon. Right. So we have to bear that in mind. We can't give away too much of the plot because there are people who haven't seen it. I thought we'd start with Fiona. Fiona, just tell us a little bit about the history of Geordie Sinatra and how you came to write it and what the impetus for that was.
Okay, yeah. Well, my dad was diagnosed with vascular dementia back in 2009. So as a result, so as a result of that, I started doing some research into dementia and came across a condition called dementia with Lewy bodies, where it causes people who have it to hallucinate. And my dad did actually hallucinate, even though he didn't have dementia with Lewy bodies. He was diagnosed with vascular dementia. And so I'd had an interest in this, and it gave me an interest really as a dramatist, because my dad had seen his sister, who had died when my dad was 15, in the bedroom. So that was quite a shock for the family when, you know, he'd said that he'd seen our Kathleen, because I thought he was talking about my sister, who's still alive and with us, very much so. And so it sort of like got me thinking, oh, this is really interesting. But also, you know, it was quite a difficult time for the family, and it really changed the relationship. In terms of like mine and my dad's relationship, you know, he always looked after me and you know, cared for me when I was little, and then all of a sudden I really had to step up to the mark and, you know, start to look out for him and look after him. So it was something that interested me, because I thought, gosh, this is a massive change in our relationship, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are going through the same thing, and I thought it was, you know, worthy of having a play written about it, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something that people could relate to. But as well, I wanted it to be fun, because, you know, me, my dad, and, you know, and I'm talking as if it's just me and my dad. It doesn't, you know, the whole family's there. My mum, you know, supports my dad, cares for my dad, and, you know, I've got brothers and sisters as well. And we have such a laugh still together. It isn't, you know, even though my dad's got dementia, he certainly hasn't lost his sense of humour. And we do laugh a lot together, really.
Yeah. And it's a play, for the few people who haven't seen it, it's a play that also has some brilliant music in it, from songs of Frank Sinatra. Richard, can I ask you a bit about what role you think music plays in Fiona's script, and also, I suppose, as a more general thing, how therapeutic you think music can be, you know, listening to songs that you really love?
It's a fantastic thing. I mean, music is being proved all the time to have a big effect on people with dementia. We went, only the other day, we went up to the Connie Lucock Centre just to sing some songs for the people up there, and there was one lady who generally just sits in the chair impassive all the time, Grace, who she just lit up, and she got up and she danced with Anthony, who plays Geordie in the show. And for some time afterwards, she was still, you know, really chatting away, and it was just something, you know, so it has a really powerful effect. So that's part of having the music in it. And the music obviously gives the play a framework, and it, you know, cuts up the scenes and provides a different element, and it lets us see into the character Geordie's head, because it's impossible to look into the head of somebody with dementia. But the play does try and sort of make that connection, and music is an obvious way to do that. And we see him, his hallucinations are that he's Frank, so we see him doing the Frank Sinatra numbers, which is a challenge as well, because there's only myself on the piano, and then the other three actors joining in to play stuff, and Tony singing. and Frank had a big band mostly. So that's, that's the challenge we have to do. But in this space, I think we've got enough of a sound to support all of that.
Absolutely, I think you rise to the challenge brilliantly. And Heather, as well as being Nancy, you also have to take on the role of Ava Gardner as well in parts of the play. Was that a brilliant excuse to go and watch loads of Ava Gardner films?
Yeah, I did do a bit of that. It's tricky because watching Ava in a film, you're watching Ava Gardner acting, and I'm playing Ava Gardner being herself. So what you get from Fiona's writing is the fiery, tempestuous, argumentative Ava Gardner that you hear about through history, rather than the glamour queen who's incredibly nice and softly spoken that you see in the film. So it was quite an interesting thing to try and find that sort of side of her character. But actors love to be different people. So you get a script where I get to be the character that I am, then I get to be Ava, then I get to be my own mother, 20 years previously. And it's just an opportunity, an excuse, not only to do another funny accent, but but to just explore a different character. So I think it's always a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah. Jill, tell us a bit about Joan. And Joan's obviously like a carer who comes back to look after to Geordie. And often carers, I suppose, are a forgotten part of the dementia picture. Tell us a bit about Joan.
Well, Joan is a little bit younger than Geordie, and she's sort of, I don't know how much I can give away.
Don't.
I won't. But yeah, she has been there. She has met Geordie, and Geordie has this wonderful home, which has sort of been rather grand in the past, having a great sort of nightclub, lots of shows going on. He's been doing his show, but it's all sort of died a bit now. And she's sort of seen what it could be and how she could help Geordie with his dementia and possibly other people with their dementia and create something that is a welcoming home for those sorts of people. And it is very much, it is hard work. I mean, I know with people with dementia, I've got, my mother is in a care home, and just seeing what people do and how people do, the way you have to interact with people with dementia, like we are going along with Geordie's hallucinations in this. And it's been interesting seeing how that's transferred to the stage. And it is like Fiona said, you've got to laugh, because if you can't laugh, and you see the people that are working in these care homes, they are the jolliest, funnest people, and it doesn't matter what they're clearing up, they'll still have a laugh about it. And it doesn't, they make the people who maybe mess themselves or whatever, they make them feel human, which is really, really important. And I think, more and more of us are having to deal with these sorts of situations, and until it comes up, we don't know what to expect. And I'm sorry, I've gone off on a tangent there. But it is, myself, all of a sudden my mum had been taken ill, and all of a sudden, like Fiona was saying, you've got to look after that person. And it's something that we don't often talk about until these things happen to us and our families. And
yeah, I mean, I think it's clear from the audience reaction to the show so far that it's amazing how many people's lives are touched by this story. Everybody knows somebody or knows somebody who has these issues to deal with, and I think it's quite clearly something that not everybody feels happy talking about, or even society feels happy talking about. So it's great that these things get aired and get a chance for people to talk about them. Which seems like a cue to open the floor for any questions that you might have for the team. Just, I suppose, indicate in the usual way. Yes, sir.
We came to see the performance last Friday, not last night, but the other Friday. I thoroughly enjoyed it, I think I would say, for all of it. one thing that struck me was looking at the audience that was here on that evening, and I was wondering how representative they were going to be of future audiences that were going to come and see the production. It seemed to me that the vast majority of people were older people, and I wondered to what extent they had taken on board the message that was clearly going to be delivered through the performance. Prior to coming along and seeing the event, I wondered how that had quite arisen. May I ask you, first of all, other audiences, have they been primarily older people, or have you had some younger people too to give the message to? Because clearly it's a play with a message.
It is a mixture, and it depends. I mean, you know, different nights of the week attract different sort of makeups of audience. I mean, theatre audiences generally tend to be older, and it's always the challenge of buildings to attract that younger audience in.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I worked in theatre and education in the 70s, and we used to work very hard at trying to get the message as, if you like, as simple as possible. And I always found that very problematic, and I just wondered, you know, a play with a message is always tricky.
Yeah.
Did you feel when you were performing that you had to make it particularly explicit, or could you not risk just putting the play across and letting the message come through?
I think when you're putting a play together, you don't, in terms of putting the play together, we don't necessarily think of the audience in that way. We perform the play to the audience. That's more in terms of how the building would market the, you know, the play itself. So when you're making it, you're just kind of building the play in order to present to whatever audience comes along. And it's, you know, there are...
I always think when you're talking about plays having messages, you know, there are as many different messages in a play as there are people in an audience, because people will take different things from the play that they see. They see the same material, but because of their own set of circumstances, they might pull different things from it. I mean, I suppose maybe we could ask Fiona what, with an ideal audience, what you would like them to get from the play that you've written.
Yeah, I think it's it's really strange, isn't it? It's people recently have said about oh, do all your plays have messages? And I go, what is? Do you think I write plays with messages? And I do. I come from a sort of like, you know, I don't intentionally go, right, I'm going to write a message. I think I write about subjects that interest me, and then go with that. Even though I come from, like, I did the course at Newcastle Poly, which is now Northumbria University. So it was always, you know, it was a political theatre course, it was a community theatre course, so it was all about taking theatre and arts into the community and widening the access, like you were saying, to younger people, to non-theatre going audiences, which live theatre did very well originally, and I saw a lot of the plays, and I think Geordie Sinatra is probably influenced by a lot of the plays that I saw that live toured around to community centres and to colleges, like through Sunderland when I was a student through Sunderland, and you know, so it really influenced me that that type of production that live used to do. And I'm waffling a bit. Messages, yeah. The message from Geordie Sinatra, I think it's, you know, with the whole thing, the important thing, the reason, say, why I did, I can't give away the end, can I? Oh dear. Oh, I was just about to ruin it for everybody. I wanted people to think about how we care for people in society generally, not just our relations, and the responsibility that we have for people in who have dementia in society, and you know, how we can make the person with dementia, how we can make their lives easier, and if that's, you know, singing along and engaging them and you know, getting them to sing and just to smile and to sit and listen for you know, for a short while. It's like, I mean, I think just even spending time, because I've did some work up at the Connie Lucock Centre, and spending time with some of the people who use the day centre up there and the staff. And it's just been a real learning experience just to give me a bit of a check and go, actually, Fiona, it's not about you. You know, life isn't all about you. A bit like Nancy, probably. And just the pleasure in simple moments like sitting and talking to somebody, you know, just holding somebody's hand when, you know, and the comfort that you can bring to somebody by just listening to them. And even if you can't work out quite what they're saying, they're not getting across their, you know, communicate, you know, they're having problems with communication, but just responding and smiling and seeing how, you know, how much that lifts their spirits. It's, you know, I just think it's important to get people thinking about it, I suppose, and putting it on the agenda, like, you know, just even in terms of being able to write, I wrote a piece for the journal, a little comment piece, and you think, well, if a few people read that and they start thinking about dementia and, you know, people come to see the play and the next time they see somebody in the street who's maybe a bit confused or, you know, they'll think about it a bit differently and think about how they treat them a bit differently, hopefully.
Wouldn't you say that perhaps all plays, well, let's go way back, you know, since these plays have been written, have a message if you are prepared to see it? As you say, the author doesn't set out to give a message, but is writing a play from observations of humanity round about. You know, Romeo and Juliet, young love, and how intense it can be and what can follow on from it. Let's face it, half the youngsters today are committing suicide because somebody's told them to go off, and all the way through. But today, it seems to be even more relevant in our society that a lot more theatre is geared to us thinking about things that are happening in life, whether it's just the rough and tumble. I must confess, I've been to a couple of films recently, and it was such a relief to come up and say, oh, thank God, no violence, no sex. I think this is it with me.
I was just going to say, from an actor's perspective, I don't think you can approach plays by wanting to deliver a message.
No.
As an actor, you are a storyteller, and all I do, in terms of what you were saying about thinking about the audience and a message, and all I want to do is convey a character, their experiences, and exactly like you say, if that causes people in the audience to feel something, to find a message from what's happening from your behaviour or the things that you say, that's all I'd ever want from what I was doing. I don't feel that as an actor I'm not a politician, I'm not my views, and I often have to, Nancy does things that I really don't like and are not like me. I often have to portray people
so well
that it's horrible, but you know, you are often being people that you are not, and that's all it is. You are presenting the story, presenting the idea, and the message should come, I think, from the writing and the audience and their own experiences.
Can I ask about the writing? When you use the expression of musician, gentleman, friend, when we put the play together, is that meaning that you're starting with Fiona's great ideas and skeleton script, and then many changes are made, or how you interpret them, and how much time during this whole process, Fiona, are you there, and how open are you to suggestions of change?
She's very open.
It's a very long process. Some time ago, Fiona will have produced the first draft of the play, which
back in November,
virtually nobody will have read other than Fiona, I should imagine.
Well, there was even a pre first draft version, which was so worthy. It was unbelievable. I didn't even show it to Chris, the director, because I was so embarrassed by it. It was awful. Nancy was just the loveliest character. She was fantastic. She knew everything about dementia. All she talked about was dementia all the time. She was such a wonderful, lovely daughter who cared for her. It was awful. There was no drama in it whatsoever. And about 10 days before I was due to deliver it, I sent it over to my comedy writing partner, Steve Cooper, and I went, "Oh, Steve, I think it's awful when you have a look at it." And we just went, "Oh my God!" And I realised that it needed a completely different approach, and I rewrote the first draft in about 10 days. Panic with very little sleep. It was, yeah. So it was very messagey, and I'm sort of like, I'm being flippant when I say I don't write plays with messages. I do think about what I'm writing all the time. I think that as a writer, you've got a responsibility. I think the course that I did taught you very much about the responsibility of an artist and what are you saying by this piece, what are you trying to get across to your audience, and I think talking about, coming back to all plays having a message, I think every single play is political, even if it's on a musical on the West End. If it's ignoring the politics, then that's political in itself. I do believe that everything, does have a political side to it.
Every play mirrors the society in which it's written. It's bound to, because the mind of the author is entranced in that particular time.
Yeah.
So they do write about what they know and about the society in which they live, which is fascinating when you're studying theatre, the different periods, and see what history you get out of all the plays that you read, and
absolutely
what society was like at the time.
And to be able to do a bit of research into something that you haven't experienced. Like, it was great to be able to read books about Frank and Ava, and try and get into that world as well, which was was really interesting. In terms of being in the rehearsal room, I was.
Well, we got a draft that Fiona was more happy with. Jez read it, the director read it, I read it, and we all had some input. Because Fiona had written in song suggestions, and I sort of threw in my ideas. And then by the time we got to rehearsals, we were on about draft 5, I think, which is what we started rehearsals with. And then the company read the script through, and then we already started making changes. And it was really a collaborative process to put it together, right the way through.
Yeah.
In fact, we had
decided before, when you first started, how many songs there would be?
Yeah.
Or was that altered because the music director wanted fewer or more?
No, I mean, I sort of gave my opinions about how it would balance out in terms of the spacing of them and the style of the songs, and whether they hang together as a group of songs for the whole thing. And then...
And the length of the songs.
How much we'd cut them. And then there were some extra songs went in, because the director maybe thought that there should be some more or less songs, and it did sort of change. In fact, it changed in the last week of rehearsals, it changed, because there's also the issue of performing rights, because lots of different people own the rights to all these songs. And with 2 days left of our rehearsals, we were told that we couldn't perform 2 of the songs that we'd been rehearsing.
Which 2 were?
They're right at the top of the show. Originally, we were starting with Come Fly With Me, which is a very well-known Frank Sinatra song. And then there was another song which is from the film Robin and the Seven Hoods, which is a song called Don't Be a Do-Badder, which is very silly and featured these guys as like a children's chorus. It was fantastic. Both of the songs are written by Jimmy Van Heusen, and the Jimmy Van Heusen catalogue is owned by a certain, well, it's very complicated. PRS, the Performing Rights Society, sort of look after the rights for most songs, but there are various songs they don't own the rights to, other companies do, so you have to go to the companies, and they're only a front for the people who really own the rights to the songs, so they have to go to them and see if we can do, and then this takes forever, and so we couldn't do those 2 songs, so we had to change the entire start of the show in the last 2 days of rehearsals, which it's a shame. Because again, it's the balance of, I think, well-known Frank Sinatra songs and less well-known, because he recorded about 1,500 songs in his career. So there's plenty to choose from.
And also it was finding the lyrics that fit in with the story.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time listening to Frank.
Do you think some company say why they wouldn't skip performing?
They never replied.
Yeah.
Which is, so we don't know. The theatrical rights for that song aren't available. That's what the Performing Rights Society told us. That's not to say that if you ask, they won't give you them. So we asked, and we never had a reply. So if we then go and perform those songs, we would be in breach of the copyright of them and liable to be sued by whoever owns them. So that's not a risk one can take in a theatre building.
You'll be in jail.
It would disappear. So yes, sadly, we never actually got a reply.
Yeah.
And then we started thinking, can we put some different songs in? But we've got 2 days left. So in the end, we ended up with songs we'd already got sort of slightly reformatted. So, but actually, it bookends Act 1 and Act 2 quite well in the end.
Yeah.
It sort of sits. But it would be nice to do Come Fly With Me.
Yeah, it would be. It'd be lovely.
There's a couple of questions over here, I think. Yes, sir.
So you're onto your 5th draft and you're bringing your cast. How long was the rehearsal process?
We had 4 weeks, didn't we?
Almost, because then you've got Easter comes along, so we had 4 days when we couldn't do anything in the middle of Easter because of the bank holidays. So we had 4 weeks minus that, really. And then a technical week after that.
And I mean, we don't make things easy for ourselves because we think we need a definitive script. I've got to learn my lines, and then we keep going back in and going, I don't know why I say this. Can we change this bit? I don't like this bit. And so Fiona is amazing and just listens and
Pena.
and that's really great because you start to gain an ownership of this. What's exciting about new writing is you have an ownership of that character because nobody else has ever played it before you, and we're all in a project together, and that's what's so great about doing plays like this. It makes it terrifying because you are the guinea pig. You know, you go out there and if it doesn't work and nobody likes it, well, you go and do Shakespeare, you pretty much know it's going to work, you know. So it is quite exciting. But yeah, I mean, things change. We had a big cuts in all of a scene, didn't we, on the day before we opened. And so then someone starts saying something to you and you think, no, I don't say that anymore. And every now and then someone will come out with a line that we haven't said for about 3 weeks. All right, oh yeah, I remember that.
And of course we're still changing it now because what changes a performance in the end is the audience and how they react. And until you put your play in front of an audience, you don't quite know what you've got.
Does that mean you're listening to the paper that goes through the box?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And we still are, and seeing if the story's being told and if we're telling the right story.
Definitely.
I think, sorry, just one thing to say about the rehearsal process, because Chris, this is obviously a co-production with Stephen Joseph Theatre in Scarborough, and I think it's fair to say that different theatre companies evolve different methods of working. And the really interesting thing with working with Chris and with Richard is that and our space, we have enough kind of spaces around the building to accommodate this, but because of the complexity of the show, there would be a choreography session going on in one space, some work on the text in another space, and some work on music in another space. So what was really nice about having you in the building was that all of these different things were happening all over the place. So it was really nice to be, have the building filled with creative people doing different things all over.
Music. It's lovely, isn't it?
Did you have a dialect coach at all?
I don't know.
There were some bits.
Jan.
Yeah.
Came in, didn't she?
We had a real Geordie come in to talk to Craig, who plays Sonny, and Chris at the beginning, because obviously he found it a little bit intimidating having to come out here and do a Geordie character in front of a Geordie audience. But yeah, bits and bobs. I mean, Craig's very experienced. He's done lots of stuff before. But yeah, that was it really. The rest was done from DVDs of Ava Gardner.
Yeah.
Just in terms of obviously the music is quite a big part of the play. Was it difficult obviously finding a cast who could play the instruments and obviously perform the characters as you wanted to perform?
It always adds an extra element to it. When we set out to find a cast, I knew that I was playing the piano, but we didn't really decide what other instruments we wanted. I mean, I had an idea of the sort of instruments I'd quite like to find, but when you're trying to cast so many different things, they've got to be the right age, they've got to do various different characters. You have to sort of have a flexibility at that point. So it could have been that we ended up with a double bass player and a saxophone player, and then I would have done the arrangements from there. But yeah, it is. Yeah, you have to sort of try and keep your process as open as possible so that you don't lose really good people, because you know, some people are good at some things and not others. Again, finding somebody to play Geordie, we sort of tried to. We ended up with a native Geordie doing it, but it was very important that we had somebody who wouldn't struggle with that accent, and then he had to sing like Frank Sinatra, and Tony, who does it, we spent a lot of time with that because his background is singing opera and music theatre mostly, and it's a very different style to singing in the way that Frank Sinatra did, so we had to spend a bit of time, you know, working on that, seeing if he would be able to do that. So yeah, it's an interesting process, but yeah, music always complicates things. But I think we did all right. You know, Jill's a fantastic trumpet player. We've even got a bit of clarinet in there. I was trying to get Heather's ukulele skills in, but I didn't manage it. You know, and Craig's.
Two very multi-talented casts who got on in Newcastle this week. One up the road, and this one there. I've been astounded at the things you've been able to do in both shows.
Yes, they're fantastic. There's some really good people in.
I can't believe this.
There was a question there, sir?
Yeah, if that's okay. Basically, I was just kind of wondering, like you said, you mentioned before how kind of humour is so important to kind of dealing with it in reality and also kind of putting it forward as a piece. I wondered, given kind of how widely it affects people, kind of how you found that balance of humour to kind of the inherent sadness to dementia, putting that across.
I think I think different drafts had a different balance in. Like I said, that pre-first draft one was very worthy, and there wasn't a laugh in the piece, I don't think. And then the first draft that I delivered, I think it was very much quite farcy. Can you remember, Jez?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty, just going for, big characters, not much of depth really in there, I don't think. And with Jez's help and Chris's help, they steered me through the process, because it's really hard when you're so close to something to actually work out, to look at it objectively. It's, a lot of people think that Nancy as a character is very harsh in the opening part of the play, whereas there's then another element that I think is hilarious, and it's really difficult, and it depends sometimes on the evening, doesn't it, and the audience as to how they
also.
I've seen it a couple of times, and the balance has always been spot on. But I was curious whether that was like kind of something that became was a word.
It developed.
And sometimes there would be things that changed because of, you'd be doing a scene and you'd say, there'd be a gag, wouldn't there? And you'd just say, I can't pull that gag off then. I'm not in my funny phase then. This is a serious moment for me, and that is. And then things would change. Or at other times, the gag would really help you to get out of something that might have got a little bit too, Yeah,
because it's really quite funny actually, because there's some things that get really big laughs that we weren't expecting to, and it's interesting, that some things that I thought were hilarious, and nobody cracks a smile. It just shows how out of touch I am. But then other things really get a really big laugh. But I do think even right before probably the fifth draft that I delivered, before then we had a bit of a reading, didn't we, and a feedback session as a result of that, and it was clear that I needed to really balance it out a bit more and pull more at the heartstrings, and focus a bit more on the vulnerability of Geordie and the dementia side of things, like the can I say this? Yeah, I think I can. There's a scene, the socks scene. It's like There's a scene where Nancy puts her dad's socks on, and that was quite a late development in the script process, but I think it's probably one of the most important scenes, and and especially for the audience to empathise with Nancy, and it's a big turning point for her as well. But and sometimes you need to be reminded of what the play's about, and you need an outside eye to tell you, and that's why it's so important. I love being in the rehearsal room and getting the input of the actors and directors, and it's fantastic. It really, it's what creating theatre is all about to me. I don't think it's about somebody sitting in their room and writing a play. I think it should be a live creative process, and obviously there's some suggestion and you go, well, no, I don't, I disagree, but let's give this a go. And then there's some things you think, yeah, actually that's a really good suggestion. I think if you can be open to that, but trust your own judgment as well, and go with it, and I think we've got the right balance, didn't we?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a question there, I think.
Yes, mainly for the actors. I'm kind of learning to act at the moment. We're working on short films, not stage acting. But what struck me when I was watching it last week was the way you just switched from one character to another, and you all had more than one character to play, sometimes within another character, and that seemed incredibly complex to me. And the first half I was trying to study what you were doing, but I got completely swept away in the story and I forgot to do that, which was a great thing for me. But I just wonder how you managed to do that. With filming it's easy because you can be doing it on different days and you can get into a character completely, but you just switched from one moment to the next, and I thought that was amazing. How do you do that?
The way I approach any character is usually physically, first of all. And it'll take me a little while, but I'll soon start to know. If you asked me to walk around like Nancy now, I'd know exactly the sort of things I'd do. Because it was very important for me, because I don't change what I wear for the whole of the second half, and I play 3 different people. And the only way, apart from my accent, that people are going to know I'm different is just embodying yourself in a slightly different way. And Ava, it's quite easy. You start to look at the glamorous, you compose a lot, and it's quite a stylised scene. Nancy is very spoiled teenager, and that works quite well. As soon as you've got that dress on, it's very anti the dress, being in this fabulous glamour outfit. And then you've got Vera, who is meant to be, 19, and doesn't really care about things. And so I think for me, as soon as I feel it in my body, it's very easy to be somebody else. But I have to have found, and sometimes that doesn't come until the first show. Once I've put the outfits on, I've moved around the space, I've got used to being with all the stuff that's here. But yeah, I think, but people work in all sorts of different ways. That's what's really exciting about acting, is that it's not a formula that works for everybody. That is what works for me. But I'm sure you will find as you develop what you're learning, that you'll get your own kind of blueprint of what you do and what's good for you, really.
It's often dependent on the type of character, so it could be a physicality, it could be a vocal thing. Often I'm the same. It's like once you get that costume on, that physically, you know where you are. Oh, God, I'm so comfy in my flip-flops in this show. As soon as I started flip-flopping around, she suddenly sort of like clonk.
Yeah.
What about the vicar?
The vicar's character is mostly derived by wearing a dog collar.
No, it isn't. He's much springier than Bill.
The vicar gets bigger every night. He's going to be singing My Way by the end.
He's becoming a bit Father Ted, I have to say. Father Dougal is my role model.
Can't go far wrong with Father Ted.
Can I just ask, is it different if it's a new piece of work, so the script may evolve and things may change during rehearsals, whereas with an extant or the script that's already been written, there's less of that. What are the challenges of something that you're kind of I mean, from how you describe the process, there are collaborative decisions being made and changes being made all the time. How do you roll with that kind of thing as a process?
Normally you will, it's a known play, and you know that you've got to get off the book, you know you're going to have to put that script down, you need to learn the lines, but with this play, obviously we were developing all the time, and you sort of got comfortable with it, but then we sort of discussing things, and no, we're going to have to change that, and then we would edit, Fiona would rewrite, so then it was a matter of getting comfortable with it again, and it was quite time consuming, and it was a big brain exercise of editing and working through that,
Yeah.
which was really interesting, because I haven't done a new play for a long time, and it is that thing of, you try as an actor to get comfortable, because you want to be comfortable with that character and get to know what they are, but it kept changing, because we were all asking, well, can that be different? I don't know if that quite works. And then, so if Nancy's character and something changed there, then that would affect Joan, and it would affect everyone else. But it was an interesting exercise to be part of.
It's just about also, you really have to trust the rest of the team. You have to trust the people that are watching you, trust the writing, the music, that it will go in the right direction. I think it's the least confident I've ever felt with a character. I mean, the person I was in the read-through is completely different to the person I play now every night. And I don't think I've had that sort of journey of change ever in something, you know.
But in my head, she was always the same. She
Really?
Yeah, in
it's
my
funny.
head.
This is typical
in my
actors.
head,
I've done all this work.
no,
I just the same.
I don't mean that to dismiss that. I think it's sometimes as a writer, you know who your character is, and you have complete confidence in it, but sometimes it's not on the page. And sometimes it takes an outside eye to tell you, you know, this character is something, and I'm going, well, no, she isn't, she's this, and then I'm going, yeah, well, maybe I'm going to have to write it differently. You know, so sometimes it isn't always on the page, but it's, you know, it's in your head, and, you know, and that's why it's really important to listen and to, you know, take that on board when other people are, you know, giving you feedback on it, and adapt, because, you know, if what was on the page was played, you know, it'd be at the start of the process, it would, you know, the audience probably wouldn't walk to her at all, you know. So, yes, thank you.
Okay, yes.
The stage setting, obviously, you know, the setting, and the fact that it all stayed the same throughout the play, is that something that you had in mind when you wrote the script, or did that develop as well?
Yeah, it was, I think because it was going to be at the Stephen Joseph as well, because it's in the round at the Stephen Joseph, you can't, I never think of changing the setting that much. I think that originally, when I'd first started out ages ago, I thought he would be in a living room in his own home, and then when I went to Jez and Max about it, and we were developing, and I pitched the idea, and there was a play called Inheritance, which was on. Yes, which was, you know, great. It was about, it's covering similar territory with a man who had dementia, and it was set in his living room. So I wanted to do something like very different from that, because we, you know, obviously the theatre doesn't want to be presenting the same types of, you know, plays over and over. So I was thinking, well, how can I, you know, make my play different? How, you know, how do we remove it from a naturalistic setting where it's in, you know, somebody's living room? You know, I loved Bones, Peter Strawn's play that was set in a club. Was it a club or a pub?
Cinema.
Wasn't it?
It was a cinema in Gateshead.
With cinema, yeah, in Gateshead. But it was same type of thing, wasn't it? There was a bar.
It was kind of backstage with where the projection room was, and there was a small bar.
Yeah, in the bar area, and also Bandits as well. That was which was C.P. Taylor's play, and so those little influences sort of like really determined the Sands Hotel, and obviously because of the nature of Geordie and his history, I thought it would be really interesting if he was still stuck in the same place, if he hadn't, if he hadn't moved, and you saw the same place in different time frames. But there was, in one of the drafts, we did actually follow Geordie to a mental health unit at one point, and there was a whole scene in a mental health unit, and I know, it seems weird now. That's just come to mind. So yeah, it did go different places, and yeah, but we just thought, no, keep it focused here.
The table asking the most questions.
Was Frank Sinatra, was he the first choice then for the major theme of the play, or were there any kind of alternatives that sort of came into mind when the initial concept was developed?
I did sort of, I was thinking, because, being absolutely honest about it, when I wanted to pitch that, I knew I wanted to write a play about dementia, and I knew that I wanted to write something for live in the Stephen Joseph. So you've got to think about what is going to be appropriate for the audience, what is going to work well in both of their spaces, what is, the Stephen Joseph and live audience going to respond to. So I knew I wanted music in. Also, the things, I looked at the things that Live had produced that I absolutely love and that I'd come out of absolutely buzzing. One of which was Cooking with Elvis, which was the Lee Hall play. So that, that was, yeah, it was absolutely fantastic, and the use of music in there, I really loved that. So I knew I couldn't do Elvis because, it had been done so well, and C.P. Taylor had done Operation Elvis as well, which was many moons ago, wasn't it? So it was like, who is there? Who else? I was thinking sort of, my dad was actually a big Johnny Cash fan. So I'd sort of thought about Johnny Cash, but then I thought, right, okay, I want somebody where, people, it's going to be more accessible, more widely accessible to a wider audience. So I was thinking about general appeal, and, Frank was the obvious choice, really. He is the voice of the century.
What was the negotiation between the two of you and Chris about which songs you wanted to use? You touched on it a bit before. Was that a kind of three-way conversation about what went in?
Yeah, a little bit. I sort of got given the song list that Fiona and Chris had talked about, and I sort of gave my opinions on the balance of it, really. Yeah. But like I say, 1,500 odd songs to choose from, and it, Fiona wanted them to help tell the story, so that sort of cuts it down very much, and that balance between well-known songs and not so well-known songs is important. And then
there was a big discussion about My Way, because I love it, and but because it's been done so many times and done well so many times, it's become, and we had a big discussion in the script meetings as well, and I know you had conversation with Chris about it, and saying, how can we make My Way different? How can we make it not just a cliche of someone singing My Way at the end? So we sort of addressed that. Obviously don't want to give anything away to people who come to see it tonight, but that was a big interesting one, wasn't it? That where we thought, because everyone's got, it's just so predictable having My Way, and I went, well, if I came to see a play called Geordie Sinatra and they didn't have My Way in, I'd be wanting me money back, So it's also managing expectation, isn't it, about what people
and we talked about what we wanted each song to do, and then we also went away back to the back catalogue of Frank Sinatra, looked at whether there were other songs that could do the same thing that would help the balance of it. We looked at The Impossible Dream at one point to do at the end instead of My Way.
Because we didn't know whether we'd get My Way right.
That was another one that was dodgy getting the rights for.
So we were sort of like, we were all like, it was a bit
question at the back there?
From a musical director viewpoint, how good is it to have a cast, as you
It is different, but I mean, it pays dividends with this kind of, it's about the venue and the piece, and in terms of this piece and telling this story, it pays dividends to do it like that. We did in Scarborough last year a production of Marlena by Pam Gems, which is about Marlena Dietrich, and we've done a similar sort of setup, and it ends with 20 minutes worth of concert material of Marlena Dietrich at the end, so the rest of the company then became the band, and you do it like that. It's also, of course, about budget, because the most expensive thing in any theatre production is hiring musicians, and so, you know, that sort of money is in this size venue doesn't exist, so you have to find ways which you can do that. Whereas if you're doing a major tour, you can hire 10, 15 musicians and go out and do that. I mean, if we made the film of Geordie Sinatra, we'd have 40 people up here in a string section, the whole band.
Yeah, when it goes to the West End.
You know, but that, you know, it's sort of, it's making that impact on this scale, so that's what you sort of make your judgments about in the end, musically.
Hello, got a question right at the back there.
Hi, no, I just wanted to ask a question. I'm a newcomer to Newcastle and I'm from many countries other than England. And so the question of, it's a question about empathy. And coming here, the question is, as actors, am I right that you travel across the country and act to different audiences? And my question is, one, in terms of how you use empathy and how much you focus on empathy and how you find how you have to actively or perhaps present or portray a character differently in order to help the audience empathize with you, especially with the subject around dementia. Sort of earlier questions were around the general age of the audience, and sort of culturally for me, it's a subject that's much easier for younger people to relate to, just because where I sort of come from, your family lives with you forever and ever and ever, and so you subjects like dementia have a much bigger part in younger people's lives than perhaps they may do in the UK or sort of. So it's a question about sort of empathy in the process of the play. How much do you focus on and take responsibility to find ways to get the audience to empathise more with the subject, or how does empathy play a role in the process of developing and evolving the play? And as actors, how do you find that do you have to take more responsibility to get the audience to empathise with the subject in the way that you're presenting? Is it different in the different parts of the country? Is it very different audiences, I'm sure?
Well, we can only focus on the feelings and of our character that we're playing. So, I mean, it can also depend on the reactions of the audiences. I wouldn't consciously change my performance if I'm in Newcastle compared to being in Cardiff, I don't think. But the reactions of the audience will affect the way we will perform it on stage. I mean, we had quite a fun show this afternoon, and everyone was there, and so maybe we brightened a little bit and we went for the comedy a little bit more, and therefore it didn't feel such a heavy show this afternoon. But it would feel completely different to a Wednesday night audience. It's not something that I think you can judge and say I'm trying to get empathy or show empathy. It's just the way your character is.
I don't think you can ask yourself to do that. I think you can only try and find a truthful journey for your character, and hopefully within the writing and within what you do to find the reasons that your character behaves in a certain way, you gain empathy from the audience. And some characters you will empathise with more than others, That's the nature of characters. You're not going to always want to empathise with everybody on the stage. The only example I would give of ever doing a different kind of performance, a long time ago did a tour in Italy of My Fair Lady, and it was for Italian students. And there, the emphasis we were in the rehearsal room told was all about physicality, because people were going to be trying to understand what you were saying in a language that they didn't know, and therefore you needed to demonstrate physically sometimes things that you were trying to say. But that's the only time I've ever consciously been performing in a different way that was audience-centric and not because of the style of the play, a naturalistic play or a big farce, or, you know, they require different kinds of acting, but certainly it's not usually to that sounds awful that it's not to do with the audience, it's all to do with the audience, but it isn't in terms of the style, I don't think is what I mean.
I suppose the only concession really is in terms of accent in a way, because we knew that we were taking this play from here to Scarborough, and you don't want to suddenly have to do a completely different accent. And obviously there is a Geordie accent, but the Geordie accent you'll hear in Biker or Benmore or wherever, you're not going to hear that in Jesmond. There is an enormous range. So in order, I mean, you could probably come out on this stage and do a very, very thick Geordie accent and be understood. But if we then take that to Scarborough and present that to that audience, then they're going to feel that they're not part of the play because they can't get into it. So there's sort of that sort of balance you take into account. But I think that's one of the only...
One of the most hilarious things was when they put the painters on the Theatre Royal after it was here, which is where it was, and they put Sir or subtitles up.
That might have been a captioned performance.
Can I just have a very quick question to Fiona?
Go on then.
And it's just that since you're taking this to Scarborough, where our Alan Acorn, of course, has written so much stuff, I don't like his treatment of things like depression, what have you. I was understand you and say, what are you laughing at? It's serious. Did that ever go through your mind?
No.
Quick
No,
question, quick answer.
Yeah, no, I think just because I know I've actually been to tea with Sir Alan. Yeah, I had a play on there last time, and he invited us over for some feedback on the play. So that was lovely. We had a really lovely afternoon, just sitting having a chat, telling us loads of theatrical anecdotes, which was nice. But no, I didn't. I suppose I just concentrated. I suppose it links in with sort of like the empathy question and to do with comedy as well, and that balance. I think it probably sounds a bit, you know, self-obsessed, and I don't mean it to come like this, but I think essentially you write for yourself in your own taste, and you sort of like, you know, go with your own judgment. Obviously you know, you think, what makes me laugh? If that makes me laugh, then hopefully it'll make an audience laugh. You know, if this makes me cry, then it'll hopefully make an audience cry in the right places, and, you know, we'll have that, and the audience will have the empathy with the characters. And I think I really wanted, you know, Nancy, I think with Nancy, I wanted her to have moved away and then to have come back, because sometimes when you see a greater change in your parents when you've spent a lot of time away, and then you go back and you go, wow, things have changed here. And, you know, I know that's what happened to me. I mean, even in the space of a month when I was up in Edinburgh, and then I got back and my dad had, you know, he was really ill, and I was... but my mum and my sister, who'd been spending time with them all the time, hadn't seen, you know, that change. So I really wanted that distance for Nancy, and I think so that a wider audience could empathise with the dementia situation. You know, I didn't want it just to be somebody who'd spent time at home, and, you know, because there was a lot of choices made about what the father-daughter relationship would be. Would she have been a person who hadn't had a life herself, and because she'd, you know, been, you know, connected with a dad so closely that she hadn't moved away? So all these decisions were made, and I think Joan fulfills the role of, you know, the carer, and is a different way in for the audience, like somebody who they can really relate to, and I think empathise with, because she is caring, and, you know, and she looks after him, and there is that real connection. But I think that it's also important that that we see the other side, that not everybody deals with dementia in the way that we should, you know.
I'm very conscious that we have to let our actors have a break between shows, and we have to sort of finish before 6ish. So, is there one last question? You've had your hand up for quite a long time.
Well, it was more just what I thought about the question, but I didn't know if anyone else would agree. In terms of lot of people in the audience were here because they like Frank Sinatra and a lot of people sing along. They might not have maybe come to see a play about dementia. And I don't think it's necessarily mentioned even in the poster, that's about that. But from my point of view, I've got no experience with dementia, but myself and my husband work with people with disabilities. And I can empathise with the way it can change people's opinions. Because before I did that, I was a bit like, if I saw someone maybe acting bizarrely in the street, I might have avoided them, where now it makes me step back and think it could be anything. It could have autism, it could have cerebral palsy, or mental health problems, or dementia. And that's what something like this can do. It's not a case of maybe saying, this is what we've got to do with people with dementia, but just be a bit more open-minded. If there's a reason why people are accepting or aren't, or you know, and that's what I felt when you sing in my way. I felt, but it was accessing, because there's so many people knocking about who are misunderstood, and there's always a reason for it.
As that wasn't a question, we might be able to get one more question. You have had your hand up as well for quite a long time.
Can I ask if any or how many of the cast actually came to the rehearsals of the play with any knowledge of dementia? Did they realise how much laughter and how much tears is involved in the caring of someone with dementia, and the balance? I mean, when I saw the wallet come out, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream and stamp my feet. Did you have any previous contact with anyone with dementia?
Yeah, I mean, my mother is in a care home at the moment, so, and like I said earlier, it is full of laughs as well. Yes, it's very sad, and you've lost a certain part of your mum, but just to see her interacting with the other people there and the carers, and like they have people, like we went into a day centre this week and sang, and they have people that are coming in and entertaining and joining in and stimulating in that way, which is what Joan is hoping to be able to do with the Sands. It's an interesting way of being able to talk about it with people.
Yes. The characters came at it from quite different viewpoints. It looked as though Joan was very caring, and of course the young girl is the world centres around you. It was very, very well portrayed.
Yeah, and Chris, our director, his father died from dementia in 2007, so he had a very direct connection to it as well. Yeah, and my mum helps out. I mean, my mum's 75, but she helps out in a centre with people with dementia, just, you know, helping make meals and talking to people.
So to be, my dad had Alzheimer's, and the hallucinations seemed to be with everyone. I was very fortunate that my dad didn't have anything to do with my neighbours, because he regularly met two men in my bathroom and I would die. He was telling that to them.
Yeah, Chris says that his dad never lost his sense of humour through, even with everything he was coping with, he still kept his sense of humour. And in the end, that's what sort of helps you along, really.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to go with that.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much for those great questions and contributions from the floor. Thank you very much to Fiona and Richard and Heather and Jill. I hope you are seeing the show tonight. I hope you enjoy the show. And people who know anybody in Scarborough, please tell them about Scarborough when...
Start spreading!
We're not quite leaving today.
It's a good job I'm not singing.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.